Legends of the Forces here. We all got our packs. We all did our openings except for Sharkey. We'll get to that a little bit later. It's crunch time. Galactic Championships is a couple weeks away. The scalding hot temperatures in Vegas are going to be there, but in Denver, it's also unseasonably hot. 100 degrees, and things are also heating up in our practice room, our practice Discord sessions with Kyle and Sharkey. What's going on, guys? First podcast in a couple weeks.
Yeah, what's up? We've been doing a lot of, I guess, live play, right?
Yep.
This is the first kind of like sit down and chat that we've done in a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, we've been.
I like the combo though.
We've been talking too much generally. I'm good with the only a few conversations here and there, but yeah, it's been good. You know, it's that rush when the new set comes out. We all behave irresponsibly with our bank accounts and/or our work schedules. We open packs. We have fun. Sharky, I know we mentioned it off the top. You haven't gotten half your boxes yet. Wave the fist up in the air. I would be complaining more than you are, but your time will come. But yeah, that's the thing, right? It's the new set, new beginnings, new meta, new conversations, but the same concept. We need to develop a deck. We need to make sure that our sideboards are equipped for what we predict the meta to be. And we need to attempt to have a little fun doing it. So that's what we've been working on. That's what we've been hanging out and doing, whether it's some long shots when we started the set with like a Kit Blue build or our Kylo ECL, and you know, things that you start at one point, you have optimism or skepticism from Kyle, you test things out and you see where you're at. Now it's time that the rubber kind of hits the road, right, Kyle?
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, I think we started off with, hey, let's test out the new leaders. Let's figure out how these are going to work, which ones actually might break through. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm starting to feel like there's not much of that. The new leaders in general are not breaking through. There's a couple of exceptions or maybe exceptions there, but I think we're starting to settle on powered up existing leaders or powered up existing strategies, right? You know, if you're playing with your friends or if you're seeing play online, maybe starting to attend some local tournaments. If some of your local venues let you play with the new set early, I know some of ours did around here.
Breaking the rules. I like it.
But you know, it has been interesting, right, to kind of see where things are flowing, what leaders are kind of, you know, bubbling up towards the top, and then, you know, obviously in our play sessions we've got a scheduled time, and we try to figure out, hey, this is the deck that we think is going to be good, or the one we want to play this week, and then, you know, we play it into everything, or we have different people rotate through. Obviously on our team we have people that are better with different strategies, so we try to, you know, have people play to their strengths and figure out what we think is going to be good and what's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it's good to challenge those assumptions, whether it's just in conversation or otherwise, right? Like that's why having people to play with, a team, friends, whatever, is so functional. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about our process, how we've been doing it, our prep towards Galactic, some of our predictions. We'll talk about some of the new leaders that Kyle mentioned, because we did kind of put them through the ringer a little bit. Maybe before we go to Galactics, we'll do like our updated new leader tier list, our new card tier list. I think my cards will generally stay the same. Like I still think Yoda is awesome. Like, you know, Vader's still really good, but you know, I'm probably less high on Avar than I was, and you know, I would say Sharky, you're probably less high on Kit than you were.
I don't know if I'd say I'm less high on him. I think he's awesome. However, I don't think he competes in the same colors as Han at the moment. So
Sure.
Yeah, like I still think he's fun and probably one of the better leaders of the set. I don't know that he would be one of the ones that we would call breaking through at the moment. So yes, from that perspective, it's a bit of a downgrade.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I kind of want to start our general process conversation out is how do you figure out whether a leader is up to snuff? Like, what do you do? And how does that change, right? So before, I think prior to this set, we were always talking about, hey, like if you can't beat Sabine, you're probably not competing if you can't beat some other stuff. But Sabine's probably where you should start, right? And maybe that's because of the games are easy or whatever. Right now, that's not the first place that we're starting, but as you know, Kyle, myself, where we're both, you know, accomplished Sabine players, I think Sabine will still be represented in Vegas, and if you're not ready for it, it's gonna do Sabine things and run you over in certain matchups. But where are you at with our queen, Kyle?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as Sabine goes, you probably only changed a couple of cards, right? I guess really the one card that's been of interest to me has been Yoda's lightsaber. To me, it's a 2-drop, potentially replacing Dark Saber if you were running some other Saber. So you're only losing 1, power on it when you're hitting compared to the Dark Saber. But it's at the cost of only having to pay 2 for something, right? So if it gets confiscated or removed, feels less bad. You can also go 2 and 2 on the flip turn. So the deck really didn't change much. Maybe 1 tiny power up if that works out. But it's still Sabine. It still does Sabine things, right? I still expect to see it, run into it. Even as we looked at regionals, there was a couple of Sabines in the top 8, right?
Sure.
So she'll be there again, right? I have had some fun showing up, maybe online some places with Sabine. And I think we were talking about it the other day, and I was like, I ran like 12, 13 in a row, or something like that. I'm like, just making sure people remember Sabine's around, right? As people are trying out these new leaders and strategies. So, still strong. I'm not sure it's the choice I would go with going into Galactics, but it's an option.
Yeah, and I would say the only other card that I've been messing around with in that deck is the Season Fleet Admiral. And I've actually really enjoyed it. I think obviously we've been seeing a ton of Kiati, a ton of general card draw overall. So that's been really good. I think that is for me at least has firmly taken that like 14th and 15th turn 1 play slot for me in Sabine away from Jin Urso, Rebel Pathfinder, Luke Skywalker, whatever works for you personally, right? But we say Sabine kind of, usually starts things off. So Sharkey, one of the things that, we've always worked on is like, hey, Cat is good into Sabine. This matchup, like fight math almost, like if this person beats this person beats that person. Who do you think benefits the most realistically within the sphere of like, not talking about like a Palp double green or something, but something that is meta viable that benefits from Sabine's kind of decline, if you lack of a better term?
I wouldn't call it a decline. I would call it a wider representation of more leaders, which kind of just dilutes the pool. So you will have to be ready to play against Sabine. It definitely benefits the taller decks. So the decks that go longer in games, I think Han 2 springs to mind. I think there are some of the later mid-rangey things. Luke and Obi-Wan from a couple sets ago. There's a chance the new Obi-Wan has a way to make it so that he can break in as well. That would be the other one that I think is close. But like the decks that are mid-rangey and up, I think actually benefit a bit from Sabine being less represented as a total population, because that allows them to get to those mid to late game areas where their strengths will shine.
Yeah. Sabine's got a new real problem, and that problem's name is Cheer It. There's a lot of decks that can kind of shut Sabine down or really, really slow Sabine down right there in that early to mid stage of the game. And it's a problem. Right? And there's not a lot of great answers until you can, maybe ECL the next turn. There's a couple of things you can do, but you got to be ready for it immediately. And if you don't have an answer, you can just lose immediately.
It also
that's one of the things that scares me.
Saving your ECL wrecker for like the big bad, like the leader flip, the Cad Bane, whatever it is. And now it's like, oh yeah, I gotta do this on this 4 cost, right? Like my suited up Sabine doesn't do this. But yeah, sure, it's good in both aspects, right? A card that we're gonna see a ton of share. And to just piggyback off that a little bit, like we mentioned that, it's more like supercharged new leaders that have been, or old leaders that have been really, the top of the charts recently. But one leader that I think surpassed all 3 of our expectations so far from the new perspective is probably Mother Talzin. And she's just another deck that also really takes advantage of that shirt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. She's gonna, some of these kind of what she's really good at is eating up these early game strategies, really controlling the board early and into the mid. The challenge I found with her though is then transitioning to a win in the late game, right? I think we've seen her kind of tend to stall out a little bit and then struggle with some of these later game oriented decks. And then maybe it's the way we're constructing it, but she is very good at kind of handling these early game strategies, like a Sabine potentially, right? So. Sabine definitely has some new things to worry about, which is part of your calculus in which deck you might bring.
Yeah. If you want to see,
I think at this point,
go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, sorry, go ahead,
please.
Oh yeah. So at this point, you're going to see the Sabines that are. I know there's no literal pro level in this game yet, but like the only Sabines who are going to run Sabine are going to be the pro level Sabines, who will still probably end up making her the premier aggro deck of this format, probably through next March. But I don't think you'll see quite as many people picking up the Sabine deck just to go run it outside of like maybe they can afford some of the cheaper versions of it.
Yeah, it used to be the crowded Metropolis and the KTOD Discord, that thread. Now it's saw a few tumbleweed. Just kidding. It's still a very great community, but you know, it's one of those things where things change for people. And also, I think quality is probably that stubbornness too, to say, hey, I'm staying on Sabine in certain sense, and sometimes that stubbornness serves you well.
Yeah, Sabine may just have to evolve in this case, because I would not be all that shocked to see Sabine Yellow being maybe the new flavor of Sabine as well, because that deck can push damage fast from many different angles, and if you're in space, who cares about Chirrut?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've obviously been noticing, and everybody kind of otherwise has as well in their testing, is that both colors of Han 2 have been really highly represented across the board, whether we're looking at SWU stats, what people are talking about, what people are playing, and probably for good reason, right? Like, they're very strong decks. They do things that are quote unquote unfair to varying degrees, right? Like, in green, you have the ability to really chain together some actions and cheat resources and recursion and all that good stuff. Blue, you have really good, probably better cards overall, and just have the ability to really
long game grind.
Yeah, and they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, but that kind of leads the conversation around what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So as we approach it as a team, we kind of decide, like, hey, like, who's on the side of how we're going to attack Han, and who wants to play Han, right? And what could you learn from these different conversations? Right now, as we're 3 weeks, 4 weeks into hardcore testing, obviously as the set comes out, it gets more serious and et cetera, et cetera. But what are your biggest takeaways as you think about the meta and how it's changed and what we should be expecting at the end of the month, Sharkey?
I don't know. I don't know that I want to make a firm meta call at the moment, actually, because I think it's still fairly wide open. There's actually a lot of what we're finding to be viable decks. They're just, all of them have a bad matchup somewhere. And it's a matter of tuning your specific deck to meet, or at least be able to play into your bad matchup. How badly do you get beat by that bad matchup? That being said, I do think having a game plan into Han 2 of both color variants is a good idea. Having a game plan into probably the Tarkentown decks to counter the Han decks will also be something you need to keep in mind, as well as don't forget space aggro exists. Vader will be represented, and I think Vader can still sneak through if you're not prepared for him. And at some point, you're getting real tight on a deck that can't have answers for everything. So I do think that those will be the big three. Like, you'll see the space aggro and probably Vader most represented there. You'll have the Sabines of the world, and you'll have the Hans of the world, and that will probably be the biggest chunks that we'll see. But I don't expect anybody to be running like they were. I don't expect day 2 to be something as similar as it was like with Django. Django was some 40% of day 2, if I remember right. And I don't think that's going to happen again.
I think a big one you didn't mention there was Kira. I don't think she fits into the kind of the boxes that you qualified. I expect there to be Kira, right? Or maybe kind of the new hotness, right? The blue-green villain, maybe some Kylo. I don't know if that's an ECL or a data vault, but I certainly run into it. I think if you look at the online play rates, because we haven't had any big major in-person tournaments, right? So we don't have tournament data to look at. So really, you only have online data. The play rates show a lot of Han, right? And so it's a powerful deck, right? It's fairly it makes a lot of sense. It's a straightforward strategy. It involves a lot of new cards, so it's fun to play. But I think we have enough time here to start figuring out if that is going to be the most represented deck. What's the deck that beats it, right? So do you play the game of, I'm going to play the generally powerful deck, or am I going to try to play ahead of that and play the deck that beats the deck, right? Or you go super meta and you play the deck that beats that deck.
You don't do that. You don't
He's 3 steps ahead. It's fine.
One thing that, let's pause there for a second. There's lots to kind of dive into, but there's a lot of different perspectives. Like, for instance, like, can a deck survive being the top dog, right? Like, some are more resilient than others, right? I think a lot of Vader players currently have some concerns to varying degrees about all the hate that is being loaded for them, especially as Han rises in popularity and other red decks overall. We can play Bombing Run, the Space Sentinels, so on and so forth, right? As you look at these different leaders, we talked about space aggro that has, maybe Sabine, Luke, Kaz. Some people might put Boba Data Vault in there. Well, that's probably a little bit more on the mid-rangey side. You have Han Green as well, Han 1 Green. Then you have Kira and the Hans and all these things. What are these qualities that we're looking for? Like, how do you approach that, Kyle, to say, like, what's your tolerance level for it? One, do you want to play the top dog? Do you want to be that deck and be attacked? And two, how do you decide what you're teching for? Because as Sharkey mentioned, you can't tech for everything.
Yeah, for me, it's typically a comfortability thing. Kind of what do I have the most reps with? What do I know the lines the most into? But you guys know me. I typically do not like to play the top dog. I'm not a mirror player. I mean, I can, but I don't want to. Typically I try to play a deck that I think will be a little underrepresented, just so I cannot face as many mirrors, just because I don't enjoy it. It can be interesting sometimes, but in a case like this where we have multiple Hans that are different in a lot of ways, maybe it's less of a mirror when you run into that strategy, if that's the route you choose to go. I think you had mentioned earlier that you thought it was, or I think Sharkey said he thought it was more of a wider field, but I want to talk just a second about kind of how maybe the field is narrowed. You just mentioned Han Green, right? I think we're firmly in a force throw meta. We talked a little bit about how, maybe they would ban force throw. We had the developer or the meta update from FFG not too long ago, and it did not happen. And obviously this means we're talking about Han, we're talking about some of these decks. There's going to be a lot of force throws, and some games are just going to come down to, I drew more force throws than you in those games. And how many of those types of games do you want to play? To that point, though, some of the decks that suffer from this meta is like a Han Green, I think. Han Green, you're trying to be aggressive with your using cards from your hand to put them down. And if your opponent is force throwing you, it's going to be, you might have a rough time, right? Another deck that, might, suffer from some of the current evolutions, in my view, is Quinlan too. While Quinlan might seem good into Han with the ping Tarkentown strategy, at least in my testing, what I figured out is that these Han decks draw a lot of cards. Obviously we've got Kiadi now, we've got Yoda. They've got so many ways to draw cards that it kind of hurts the Quinlan hand control strategy, right? Yeah. So I don't know, Han 1 Green, Quinlan Red, these are two decks we saw a lot of previously. In my view, those two might be headed down. So, to answer your question about like, how am I going to decide what to sideboard for? How am I going to strategize? I think I'm trying to narrow what I think the primary decks are going to be. And in my view, those kind of decks maybe come down a little. I think Sabine comes down a little. So I'm most worried about Han, Vader, Kira, I think.
Yeah, and those are decks that all require kind of something a little bit different. I mean, when you look at Han, some of the weaknesses or Han 2 to be specific, some of the weaknesses from the outside are probably like, hey, let's get some pings going, whether it's, red 5, whether it's in the mirror Grogu moving stuff around, Tarkentown, whatever you're doing to ping, because they have less overall health. This is what we could do. I don't know exactly what the package is for that. Potentially it's some things that give you minus something. Maybe it's more widespread pinging. Maybe it's a unit like Bendu late in the game or something like that. But when you talk about Vader, when you talk about Kira, and to a lesser extent Quinlan, they kind of have a package that people know what you need to bring in to be ready for those different situations. For Kira, you need to be able to answer the flip. Open fire, hidden sharpshooter, Han Solo, Agent Cal, whatever the case may be, right? For Cad Bane, you want some 3/5s to really gunk up the middle game. Obviously, these just generalizations. But what do you do to fight against Han right now? Like, if we're making a YouTube clip right now, Sharky, and we say, hey, this is how you beat Han 2, and this is a lot of pressure, and we work together as a team, right? What do you do? Like, what's the concept?
The concept, at least that I've been working with, and I'm not 100% sure this is the right one yet. We still have a lot of testing to do in the next 2 weeks. Is that at least I'm going to strictly pick out the Force Han decks at this point, because if you can deny them the Force, you deny them the card draw, you can then grind them out of a game. Or you can, in some cases, aggro them out of the game. It depends on which strategy you're attacking with, right? But they are very tough to keep off of the Force for a long time. So at some point, figuring out when and how to attack, both keeping them off and getting your damage through before they can really start swinging haymakers at the end of the game, is where I find it to be the key, I guess, way of attacking into these decks, right? I don't know that I have a good answer for it other than possibly just switch over to a space aggro deck and make them deal with you. But that it comes with its own baggage, right? So if someone runs a bombing run across Vader or two, maybe they have a problem there. But generally speaking, you have to find a way to make sure that they can't get their engine running as fast as they would like to.
Yeah, I think we've had a few strategies to try, right? Force denial, I think, is one that, I think we found is difficult to do, as you point out. I've thought, well, let's hit them in space. They don't have a lot of space, but they have a lot of ways to interact with space. And so maybe that hasn't been as effective as I'd hoped, right? So, the next thought was, all right, well, let's try to just pour on the damage. Maybe we could do indirect damage. We try a Boba pilot deck, something like that. I mean, I think there's angles to try to attack. It's going to be a matter of figuring out the right list that is effective to getting in there. I'm sure there's somebody out there watching this video right now being like, I got it. I already know how to beat Han. I'm good,
Yeah.
It's something we're definitely working on, you know?
I think one of the key things here, or two of the key things here, and is just that red is that new thing, right? Like a couple months ago, 3 months ago, there were points where it felt like if you aren't playing yellow, you're doing it wrong, right? Like there's been a lot of points that have felt like that in the game's history, and that's not great. Right now, though, if you don't have force and red, you're not playing force throw, you're not drawing with Kiadi, and you're not doing stuff like that. So is Kiadi a comparable problem that needs to be solved compared to force throw right now?
I think Kiadi is the key to your point of like, if you're not playing yellow, you're doing it wrong in past metas. What yellow was effective at in a lot of different ways was hand control or hand disruption, right? Either taking individual cards, taking away multiple cards, whatever it was, and what would keep these blue, red hero decks down was that hand destruction or hand manipulation. Kiadi kind of takes that away. Right? It's, okay, you got my hand, no problem. I'm just going to reload, and keep going. And so it took a really good strategy you had to kind of get at that deck and has taken it away, right? I mean, I've played Anakin, before, like Anakin Colossus. And a good way to get that was to, hand manipulate them. But now if they could just reload their hand, it's kind of a different story, at least with the Force version, obviously.
So what's the problem with Anakin, right? Why can't we use him to trade up with these new shiny 2/4s to 2/5s, depending on what colors you're in, and try to keep somebody off the Force that way? Like, what's the downfall there?
To oversimplify it, I mean, do you like rolling dice? Because if so, then I mean, if you win initiative every time, you actually might get it. But if you don't get the initiative, it's a slog, man. It's actually really tough to come back from.
Yep, I was going to say exactly the same thing. If you have the initiative, that strategy works great. You trade up into their stuff, you keep them off the Force, but when you don't have it, doesn't feel so good.
I think that's why
they're cheating stuff out and you're not, with Han.
I think that's why a deck like Talzin has seen a lot of growth and popularity, because you do get the ability to go across arena really nicely. You have really good certain units, but really bad other units. And then if you're playing a deck like Han Green or Han Blue, Han 2 Blue again, they're not playing any bad units, like every unit, those things are stacked all the way up the curve, and that could be an issue, right? And I think that Han has presented, especially currently right now with all the shit that's going on, I think Han is presenting a pretty complex problem, right? And I do think that Han probably is the type of deck, whether it's blue or green, that might be able to stand the test of being at the top of things, because it is so flexible. It is so varied. Whether you're, on the green side, like, are you playing a ton of home ones and a ton of like tranquilities and big units trying to loop and just go super long, or are you going a little bit shorter, or maybe you're going aggro and really trying to do like the Polish swoop racer style, right? In blue, like, are you playing Poe? Are you playing Anakin? Are you playing Mace? Are you playing bigger Mace? Like, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think that comes from an expanded card pool, right? But I do think Han presents a really challenging problem to solve.
Han does enable a lot of that. It enables a lot of using the new card pool to advantages that most other leaders can't, by being able to play them early.
Yeah.
And in the case of Talzin, I actually think part of the reason Talzin, at least for me specifically, is still in the running for the deck that I play is that she has less of the initiative problem, because there are cards you can put in her deck that, while may not be the best, can enable you to get back onto the Force and back onto the board control. But Han, the leader, is very flexible, and it turns out resource cheating is a really good mechanic.
Yeah.
It's almost like we saw that in set 1. So that strategy is going to be wide open and varied, and so targeting it becomes difficult because the specifics of which deck you're up against may not be known until game 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to our process, so what are we doing now, right? As you can tell, we're talking a lot about Han. Obviously, we've played a lot of Han. I think we've kind of transitioned as a group to now how do we beat Han, right? It's a lot of Han hating, it's kind of where we're at in our process, figuring out what beats it up, that sort of thing. And if those things are viable into other decks, when we find answers. I'm gonna give a shout out to and also blame Wu for this Maul blue deck, right? But I'm starting to see a lot more of that, and it presents challenges, right? So maybe that comes into the mix over, kind of how we handle it. We've talking about spreading damage, pinging things, then he still has the edicts, right? He's got power of the dark side, that sort of thing to kind of help keep off force. So, I think that's the next one, I'm going to try to see how it does into these strategies. But yeah, that's the point of the road where we're at, right? I think from a testing perspective.
Yeah, and I think that we're all kind of, like you mentioned earlier, playing to our strengths, trying to figure out what those things are. For me, one area that's been very attractive is space aggro, right? Like, how do I create a different problem for my opponent to solve than Vader presents, right? Like, how do I make a space aggro deck that isn't as fragile to things like bobbing run, right? So Sharkey, we obviously alluded to decks like that earlier. You mentioned baggage. What is the baggage around space aggro? What's the reason that you're not doing it, or you shouldn't do it, or the things that you should be concerned about?
I think it's more of the latter there. The things you should be concerned about. And in Vader's case, Vader has some, I don't want to call them silver bullet answers, but there's some effectively silver bullet answers to Vader. And this is an overgeneralization, so I don't want to see in the comments Carlos coming after me. But basically, you can target Vader to a point where the deck is very hard to get rolling. And I don't think it's all that many cards or all that many playlines you need to add to an existing deck. So I don't think Vader is actually really all that great when he's targeted. So Vader specifically becomes a bit of an issue if he's the top deck. Now, that being said, we have been playing with basically, from what I understand, let me back up. Your favorite deck, is what I'm going to call it, is Kaz Blue, because that deck is awesome. And it's a very good alternate take on space aggro for the most part that is a lot chunkier than Vader. And so the same answers that work against Vader that we've talked about, like Maul would also be very good into the Vader with the pings, don't actually work that well against Kaz or Kaz-like decks. So that presents a problem for the opponents, which is probably where you're trying to go for anyway if you're playing the Kaz deck. You want to present them with a problem that they don't have an answer to. Mm-hmm. And that is one way in which you can attack that space lane in a different way than other people have done so far.
Yeah, the question is, though, can the Kaz deck beat the Vader deck? Can the Kaz deck beat a hard control deck or, a medium control deck, those types of things? Another deck that I know that we're all kind of have varying levels of interest in is Sabine Yellow, right, Kyle?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, when you guys are talking about kind of the Kaz method for space aggro, kind of the ones I've been looking at has been Sabine Yellow. Rebel Resource popularized that and has been very good with it for a long time. It's always present. It's around, right? It's got game. The other one I've been looking at is, hey, if I'm worried about Sabine on the ground because of Chirrut, maybe I'm looking at Poe ECL, right? I mean, Poe ECL is very similar to a Sabine ECL, but I can present more of a space threat, right? I can go for more of a space lane strategy as I'm kind of trying to do very similar things to Sabine. So, yeah, I agree. I think a good space aggro deck potentially is well positioned. It's just a matter of figuring out which one, works the best into the current challenges.
Yeah. Because I do just think from the aggro perspective, and I'm probably the more aggro person from a Star Wars perspective here. At least Kyle's the most aggro person in the overall perspective.
The more aggro person,
right? I probably played the most aggro out of anyone here, and it's that, like, I don't know how a ground only aggro deck kind of does it. Maybe it's something like, the Unity decks with Rex that I missed and just didn't see, but there's a lot of impediments, right? Like there's obviously Chirrut, we mentioned him, but there's Obi-Wan, there's bigger Obi-Wan, right? Like there's a lot of different units that slow
Obi-Wans
down
with
what a
the bell curve.
ground only attack does, right? So I think you at least need to be able to attack both arenas if you're trying to go that route. And I haven't really seen that many force decks that can do that, right? So it's a challenge to try to figure out what direction to spend time working on from that perspective, right?
So to spin off really quick, actually, Kyle reminded me that I actually went up against a Poe yellow deck as well earlier
Mhm.
that was doing similar things, but I think might actually be just as fast as Sabine, if not faster. Shout out to that Jake guy for showing me the list and everything, but like it it's got some legs there too. I haven't had a chance to run it yet, so I don't want to say it's like the best next thing, but it's got potential. And if you know that deck better than your opponent knows the deck and like, how to fight against you, then you could absolutely steal games that might not otherwise 3 tournaments from now.
Yeah. And, another thing that we've been talking about is what the decks will look like on day 1 versus day 2, right? And Kyle and I are very lucky to have Sharkey. You need to grind through day 1, right? How much is that changing your calculus on what you want to play?
So I think it changes the calculus in that it doesn't change much. And it
Okay.
means that I'm probably not going to branch out too far, because if I'm grinding 3 days, I need to be able to play it
That's
when
fair.
I'm not at peak performance level. And so that narrows it down pretty significantly for me because of that, which is a bit unfortunate, but it is a reality of where we are in the timing of this particular tournament. So it changes the fact that I can't play with all the new stuff for any longer, really, and I need to lock it down in the next probably 24 hours and start practicing. So,
Well, I think there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot more bullshit, right? On day
yeah,
1.
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I was going to say a wider field, but yeah, day 1 you're going to see a lot more range, a lot more variety in what you
Yeah,
might
that's a
face.
nice
I
way
don't
to
know. You
say
could
it.
sit down and face a Hera around 1. Like you could get got
Yeah.
by some crazy, Thrawn deck or something
Triple
like that.
lightsaber on Sawtooth or
Yeah.
Axetooth and boom,
Right.
boom, boom,
And things
Yeah.
like that are why like falling back into familiarity is probably the right path for me, which everyone who knows me knows that's probably Cad Bane. However, I have been trying my best to do some due diligence and try out some other decks in the last month and a half.
I'll
So,
attest to that. I'll attest to that.
Yeah.
You've been reaching out and checking out new things in the universe. But yeah, these are all like real things. And right now we're recording this on the 9th of July, right? So we got plenty of time, plenty of games to play, but how you spend your time needs to be directed and stuff like that. So okay, we've talked about the things that we're targeting, the decks that we think are popular. Somebody else is looking out there trying to say like, what do I do? Like, I'm just trying to play online to get ready. Me and my friends are going out, we only have cards for this or that. Like, what are like the main generalities that you're looking like? For me, at least, the thing that I'm focusing on the most right now, whether it's Han, Avar, Kit, etc., like whatever decks I'm playing, I think I'm trying to cheat things out early. I think I want a resource cheat, and I think I want an action cheat. I think those are the decks that I'm trying to focus on in different ways. Sharkey, you mentioned Kaz Blue being a deck I'm very interested in. Han on a Falcon is amazing, right? Being able to blank and claim and Kaz. That's all the whole concept there. So what would be one thing that we could leave a nugget to for the listeners and viewers about that sort of thing?
Yeah, if you're asking me,
Sure.
mine is more of a process thing. So it's less of a mechanical, like what strategy I'm trying to employ in the game.
Mhm.
For me, you guys know, I don't like playing online, right? I feel like it's a necessary
Yeah.
evil to get my play testing in, right? I enjoy absorbing content from other people as they're doing it,
Mhm.
or commentating, or kind of doing that kind of group think situation.
Sure.
I don't actually like pushing the buttons, right? To me, the whole reason I play a card game is I want to do it in paper, in person. And I think that,
Thing going.
yeah, well, what does that mean? I don't even know what that means.
We were just making fun of you for being
My
old,
bad.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
my point is, my goal here ahead of Galactics is to find as many in-person opportunities as possible. I get more out of playing in person. I feel like I learn more. I'm guaranteed to be getting best of 3 matches, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So here in Colorado, fortunately, over the next week and a half, there's a few events, right? I could probably get to a constructed tournament at least once every other day. So I'm going to try to hit up a few of those. And then we've also, from talking about our process, we've been talking about trying to set up in-person events, even if it's not a tournament, but finding a place to go, whether it's to a game store for just to get together and run matches, or at one of our houses. But to me, that's important. That's what I want to do. And, I feel like I'm going to get the most out of that, is sitting down, playing reps in paper with the rest of y'all. I mean, we talked about this the other day, but one thing that happens is, like, when you're playing online, you don't miss flipping your force coin, right? It works. It works for you. Yep. I can tell you, if you haven't played enough reps with the force, you're gonna forget, or you're not gonna, get the force, or you're not, there's a lot, even during the pre-releases, there's a lot of people messing that up, right? So
the classic
you
Han resource deletion.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You need some reps in person to get these sequencing things down, right? So make sure you do that.
So I'm going to provide a counterpoint, though. I'm going to provide a counterpoint. I like playing in person. I just hate people. I don't want to be around them, especially you guys. But no, I like playing online. I like playing in person just as much. But you can get a lot more volume online. The quality of that volume is up for conversation. But when I'm playing with fine folks like you guys, you kind of insulate that volume. But one thing that I'll say, and I don't think this is controversial, and you could do it in person, you could do it online. It's a little less awkward to do online, though, when you could set up a screen share in Discord. But I think it is extremely useful to play some games with friends where you're watching one person play, or watching both people play, and you can kind of talk through the thought process of resourcing or pinging or sequencing. And for me personally, I think that's just easier to do online.
I do less talking through in those situations and more scolding bad play. I find that helps.
Yeah, it helps.
It helps other people too in some cases. It just as long as they're ready.
It's true. It's like, hey, shouldn't you done that? And then it's like, yeah, let's just revert the turn and do it again, right? So I do think it's really, jokes aside, obviously snark, blah blah blah. But I think it's really useful, and it's a good reason to go to locals and make some friends that you can play with, right?
Yeah. So go to locals and make some friends that don't mind you talking shit when they're playing too. Yeah. That's actually a really big deal. And like, we joke about talking shit, but basically it's more along the lines of, hey, by the way, did you think of this?
Yeah.
And it's just like playing sports where you go drill the same motion 1,500 times, right? You're going to go just do that. So that way there, it's not something that you're actively making decisions on or trying to think about in the moment. And that goes back to I'm going to use the word again, tactile feeling while playing. It's basically using your hands, Kyle. So the tactile feeling when you're playing, you get used to that muscle memory, and it's less burden on your brain during a long 9+ round tournament or 3 days of 9 rounds each, right? Like it's just eliminating things that you have to worry about during the game time.
Yeah. So the more I'm the king of that. I am firmly against, in my life and everything that I do, I want to eliminate decision fatigue. My friends will make fun of me, but I have like 9 of the hoodie that I'm wearing right now, because it just makes my day. I work from home. It just makes it easy. I grab them and that's what I'm wearing. Right. Like, but when you're in a 3-day event, a 1-day event, a 2-day event, regardless, like depending on what your experience is, like it's tough. I suffer from headaches sometimes too. Like when we went to Atlanta for the Boston Invitational, I woke up one morning feeling like shit. I was up at like 4. I had to go get coffee and headache pills and stuff. And that day you have to be able to push through while not being at your best, right? And if you don't, then that's when you do poorly, right? So that's a good nugget too. And I think that familiarity is really important. And like go out, and if you haven't played a 9-round event before, like it's gonna be more physically and mentally taxing than a 5-round event and a 7-round event and all these things. So if there are events locally, go out and do it. I know there's a couple in Colorado Springs that I might go to depending on the schedule and stuff like that. But I think it's important to be able to do that. And it's good to see what other people are playing as well and get inspiration. I make fun of Kyle for this sometimes, for being too closed off. But, sometimes I'll play a game and I'll be like, oh, okay, I would like to play this in my deck too, right? So all these things are really, really interesting. But that's what you have to do as you're getting ready for an event like this. Like, you need some luck to win, right? But an event like this, it's going to take the combination of luck and skill and opportunity.
You can't control the luck or the draws that you have. Well, you shouldn't be controlling those because that's supposed to be the random part. So do the things you can to make the parts you can control in your best interest.
Yep.
And that comes with practice, that comes with reps, that comes with knowing everything about what you're doing and why.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's all you really can do is just control the things you can control.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So leading up into this weekend, obviously we'll continue our play strategy, right? Mostly online. Hopefully some more in person coming up. One of the things that I've started to ramp up on is some of these stores still have store showdowns that they haven't run, or hopefully are going to start running some store showdowns for the next set early. I've always wanted those early. I know some people have started to show the new rewards there, right? We get a GI
and the
top
holocron
8 card, and
GI
and
Jedi holocron for
Jedi
participation,
holocron, right? But there actually is a store showdown going on up here where I live this weekend. So I'm starting to prep with Jillian, getting her some Vader practice.
Set
She's
3,
playing
set
Vader
5
pilot.
legal?
They haven't specified which sets you're allowed to play with in this store showdown. So I guess I'm gonna have to
Specify and
find
then
out.
let me know, and then maybe
It's
I'll
Sunday.
drive up. We'll see.
It's this Sunday.
Yeah.
I know that they're
Sunday's
giving
in the
away the
spring,
cards
too.
from last set, though. It's not the new rewards. It's the Devastators,
Yeah.
right? But what cards are you allowed to play with? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll
Right,
find
so-
out and let us know. Coming up here on the channel, we got a lot of stuff. Kyle is playing with Jillian on Friday. Probably, here's the name. I've been workshopping some names. I've been writing them down. I've been thinking of, what do you think of a midday matchup? I think that sounds pretty good, right? A little alliteration.
Midday matchup.
Yeah.
I like it. That sounds good. That's what I was getting towards there, though. That she's gonna be playing the Vader pilot, and I think I'm gonna play some Han Blue, and we're gonna see how that goes.
Sweet. I'm excited to
Yep,
watch
get that
it.
stream going.
And you guys should be too. What are you thinking? Like noon Mountain Standard Time, or what are you doing?
Yeah, right around lunchtime, noonish.
Yeah.
Mountain Standard Time. I get out of my work meetings, take a lunch break, and we'll throw down. I mean, the goal here is that we're going through the Jillian Jedi training sequence here, right, with my wife. So we're gonna play a best of 3. We're gonna have a sideboard. We're gonna talk through the plays. We're gonna talk through what we're sideboarding. But this isn't intended to be a super long stream. It's just it's a good best of 3 where we really talk it through. I will point out too that Jillian's excited because she's joined a Discord.
Very cool.
You guys have talked about this, the Night Sisters. So it's all ladies who play Star Wars Unlimited, right? So
Yeah, that's awesome.
We've got
we'll
2
see.
members on our team in there, right? With Sabrina as well, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
so
Yeah.
I love to see it. It's great to have a group, like we were talking about earlier. It's great to have a group of people to play with, right? Like,
yeah.
And you can't have too many of those. So yeah, that'll be at around noonish Mountain Standard for the normal people. 2 p.m. Eastern, and a little bit earlier on the Pacific Coast. We got a lot of stuff on the channel prior to that. I did a Carbonite opening with one of our teammates, Todd. Opened 12 boxes of Carbonite. Kyle and Jillian, they opened 5. 0 showcases. Gotta watch it and tell him in the comments how bad he did and how great I did. 5 for 5 on showcases. I also opened up a Darth Malik serialized. Suck it, Kyle. No, but Jillian opened up, your lovely little wife. She opened a serialized Yoda, which is beautiful, right? So I'm real pumped about that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Just last night. If you want to see a sad stream, you can watch me and Jillian just fall deeper and deeper into depression as we get to box 4 and box 5 and get no showcases. So that was a bummer.
Yeah, it was a watch.
Well, I guess if we could say there was one positive that came out of the experience was that we all got to see it, and there was some content we got out of it, which is good, so we could empathize with you and do this. It's funny, we were, Kyle and I, obviously we give each other a hard time, but on Monday we were at a pre-release and we were able to buy 3 packs of Carbonite, and I bought 3 and I walked away for a second, and he did a fake hex on it to ruin it, and out comes a Malik.
Yeah, right.
Realized. So it's a good time to be alive. And Sharkey, you're gonna do great when you get your boxes coming up.
I'd like to get them soon.
Hear it up. So yeah, and then we'll have some more streams too. Sharkey and I played some games on Sunday of last week, and we'll continue doing this. This was kind of like our general look at the Galactic Championships. As we get a little closer, we'll dive a little bit deeper and do some more firm, solid meta predictions. But I think that's it. Anybody else got some final notes as we get out of here? I'm getting tired.
Yeah, Sam, we're getting a little late on the recording, so it was good to talk to everybody. Just wanted to make sure we got one in here before, in between all these play streams. But I am enjoying the play streams, so I look forward to more of those.
Yeah, me as well. Me as well. It's always good, and one thing I'll say is that my dog's so annoying sometimes, man. He during the streams, if you like a bark or a roof, you'll enjoy the streams a little bit. Apologies in advance for that. Okay, we'll catch you guys soon. We'll catch you on Friday for Kyle and Jillian, and then we'll be back for some more gameplay and some more conversation. For Kyle and Sharkey, I'm Jordan. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. Bye.
See ya.